really privileged to be part of the RTLB Aotearoa Professional Learning Network, and look forward to continuing to see you guys join. And I'll pass it over to Leonie.
Well, kia ora everybody, my name is Leonie Filburn. I am practice leader in cluster 17. Over to you, Fee.
Kia ora koutou, ko Fiona Agnesau, and I'm a practice lead in TLB Cluster 2 and based at Whangarei Girls High and ANTS.
Morena, everybody. I'm Anthony Sanford from Cluster 33, and Deb, you mentioned it was cold up there, but it's here in Ōtautahi, it's about -3. So I think I've beaten you
You
on
win.
that one.
Kia ora, Ants.
And just for the record, it's a beautiful sunny day here in Mangakino today. So the agenda for today, we're going to take a look at designing learning that sticks. So we'll look at the principles of adult learning, and then some other sort of bigger principles around solving the right problem, making it relevant, working to motivate and making it stick. And to help us do that, we'll look at a training complexity framework and just a little document around knowledge, skills, behaviours and actions. And then Deb will talk to us about a learning design approach. And then we will have Q&A time if time permits, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions today.
Otherwise, you can pop them in the chat and we'll make a point of getting round back to it. Kia ora.
So in June, we had Brendan Spillane talk to us at Cluster 18, arranged for that, and so there were practice leaders and cluster managers there. And Brendan talked about leading learning from the inside out. But today we're talking about designing learning that sticks, and we're going to be learning from inside out. So we've got some guests along with us today who you'll see featuring in our slideshow throughout the presentation.
A rather emotional bunch.
Yes, they are very
if
emotional.
You've seen.
So we just wanted to share this with you today because in May, we went to the Teacher Development Aotearoa Summit, and there was a presenter there by the name of Tim Thatcher. And Tim is the lead of learning, advice and design for the Department of Conservation. So we're kind of like, okay, this is going to be interesting, Department of Conservation. How is that linking with education? But we were just blown away by the presentation, which is why we wanted to share it with you today. So this first slide is around the principles of adult learning. So you can see there that the principles are around involvement, they're experiential, readiness, motivation and relevance. And I had written down a whole lot of little examples, but I thought actually we've done some PD in our cluster. And this is part of the reason we wanted to share this with you today, is because you can take the learning from this and obviously utilise it in your cluster. So end of last year, we did an ERTLB review in our cluster. And as we worked through that, we realised that actually we had a bit of work to do around he pukurua. And so we wrote a proposal, which we sent to our cluster manager and our lead principal. And it was around developing our knowledge of he pukurua. And so to do that, we broke our cluster into teams, and each team had to present about a particular aspect of he pukurua. So to do that, they had to learn, dive deep, I guess, into the website and have a look at their particular area. So that was their involvement. So experiential learning is a process where adults learn by doing, reflecting and applying. So by them doing that, it was definitely definitely hit the mark with the experiential aspect. And then the readiness aspect, we kind of, I guess, to an extent, we imposed it, but actually, as we've gone along, we've realised that the readiness is there from our learners. So the motivation, because it's so relevant to our mahi, people have just been making comments about how cool it is that they've been able to work through this process. So that's just a little example of how we have used the principles of adult learning in our cluster. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Deb. So we all know that pedagogy is learning for tamariki, so it's child-focused teaching. Andragogy is adult-centered learning, and we learned a new word. we learned a new word at this presentation, and that word is hudagogy, and that's about learning for the self-determined learner. So when you are organising any PD in your cluster, obviously, you need to keep those things in mind. Did you want to add anything to that, Deb?
No, but just that whole, no, actually I won't. We'll save it for throughout.
Okay.
Bye.
So just if you can just give us some reasons that you think that adults don't engage with learning. So just pop your hand up and somebody will call your name. Just reasons that adults don't engage in learning. Got anything for us, PLN team? What are some reasons you don't engage in learning?
Mari.
Negative response to learning.
Whai Mari.
Aroha mai, down mute. Yes, I think prior experiences in learning have not been good. And so adults who don't want to engage in current training or learning experiences go back to what happened to them in previous times. That's me.
Whai Mari. Tēnā koe. Kia ora, Vicky.
Kia ora, sorry, I can't get my video camera to work at the moment, but I was just thinking of myself as a learner in this situation where I feel that if it's not relevant to me or I can't hang it on something, it's not applicable right now, I kind of glaze over a little bit and don't really listen to it until I actually really need it, and then regret not listening. So or being involved. So I think relevance is really important, and in particular when I'm thinking of teachers, going along to PLD sessions in their staff rooms, like they've got so much on top at the moment. Is it relevant for them right now in the context of their environment? Probably not. And then, you just feel like you're getting further and further behind with your own learning.
Tēnā koe, Vicky.
Kia ora, Vicky, and totally agree with the kōrero around relevance. I'm the same. If I have to sit through PD that I think is not relevant, I kind of switch off.
And whai
Anybody
Ramona?
Kia ora koutou. I think also it's those relationships and the credibility of the person that you are having that relationship with or receiving that learning from. I think that's really important as well.
Tēnā koe, whai Ramona.
Let's move to the
Yep.
slide, Deb. Thank you.
Back to you, Leonie.
Next slide. Thank you. Thanks, Deb. So some of the bigger ideas that I mentioned briefly earlier are around solving the right problem, making it relevant, working to motivate, and a big thing for this presentation is making it stick. How can you make learning stick or work towards making learning stick? So we're just going to unpack those four concepts. Next slide, please, Deb. So we're looking at solving the right problem. And one of the things that Tim shared with us, if you could go to the next slide, Deb, that would be great. Thank you. Is a couple of really valuable, well, we felt that they were really valuable ideas. So one of the big things that he talked about, that Tim talked about when he is looking at training in DOC was, is the training needed, like really, really needed? So he looks at, could they do it if they had to? Did they do it in the past? Is it basic or is it complex? And he talked about that whole idea of if it can sort of be dealt with through an email, then that's what would happen. So I guess for us in our RTLB space, if we're looking at what sort of learning could you do via email, I guess it's things like on eRTLB, you can't find a certain tab. So there might be an email that says, okay, there's a new tab on eRTLB or on the database, and just a demonstration of, a image of how to find that tab. So that's definitely not complex, quite basic. So an email will deal with it. Could you go to the next slide, please, Deb?
Sure.
So in thinking about those things, the training complexity framework is gold as far as I'm concerned. So that whole idea of can it be solved with an email would sit in box 1, potentially. The more complex thing, so the PD that I talked about earlier, I was looking at this framework last night and thinking, where would it sit for our cluster? And it might be in 8 or 9. So it was quite a complex piece of work. There was some new learning. It was not so much a process change, but there was a whole lot of new learning, because obviously alongside that comes what are we going to do on the database now? How will that look for our cluster? So I guess I'm hoping that this is self-explanatory. So along the bottom, you've got the technical skill, the system, or a process change, and along the side, knowledge, behavior, or culture. So just thinking about some PD that you've had in your cluster recently, you can map on this framework where that might sit. Deb, did you want to add any?
I think one of the big takeaways that I took from this particular slide was about when you're doing, say, we're coming up to doing our strategic plan for the next 5 years, and when we're thinking about the topics or how to prioritize, this is a really good framework to use to be able to plot that information. So one of the kaupapa say was cultural responsiveness. Now, because it's over such a longer period of time, it warrants the 9 that we will be doing ongoing things, spaced learning throughout over those 5 years, and what might that look like. So it's not something like you mentioned earlier on, I guess it was a transactional and transformational. You could also apply that to the framework, and making sure that as the leaders of our cluster, or working with your cluster managers, that you would be prioritising some of those things in that way to help be more effective, in our time management, basically, because we know we're all, time poor, and trying to find spaces with all that we're required to learn. Yeah. So I found it really a really useful thing as well, a framework, and would really am looking forward to utilising that with our cluster and the leadership team to better organise ourselves and what's coming up for us in terms of any PLD, and how we can facilitate that better, our cluster days, because that's what's also important. And then again, when you're thinking about the mahi that you're doing in kura with your kaiako, and thinking about where does that sit? Is it a systems, looking at our te matua, te kahui, or te arotahi, which area does that fit in? And I think you'll find some alignment there quite nicely. I think, does that mean there were pātai?
Thanks, Deb. And I think the key words, as you said, transactional versus transformational. So that email example, obviously transactional, but I guess the higher up in the numbers you go, the more transformational it becomes. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody also mentioned that it could be used when you've got an RTLB who wants to go to some PD, and just having a little look at where that might sit for your cluster strategic direction using the framework. Just
and
pop
probably
questions into the chat if you have any.
And probably one of the key things I thought was going to talk about at the end, but it's just about knowing our learners. So as our cluster, it's that opportunity to get to know them more, or know exactly what motivates them, what things are relevant to them through their PGC, etc., and how to utilise all of those bits of information to inform how we're going to go about our business. Yeah. Bye. you want me to
Hopefully
go
that gives you some clarity around that. Next slide, please, Deb. So Vicky talked about this a little bit earlier, making it relevant. So obviously we don't want to engage, as we mentioned, in PD if we think it's not relevant to us. Next slide, Deb, please. So what might relevance mean to an adult learner? And I asked a couple of my cluster colleagues. Next slide, Deb. And one of the things, well, the things that they said, relevant learning for them as RTLB sounds like something that improves my knowledge and skills as an RTLB. Someone else said that it's PD that recognises the unique strengths and perspectives of students. So obviously, ultimately for us, any PD that we do, we want to improve our service delivery. And it also helps that if your PD that you're providing supports retention of RTLB. Anything else, Deb, that you wanted to add to that?
No.
So I guess the key here is that relevance is a critical component of andragogy. It's not just about relevant knowledge and skills. Next slide. And so from this point on, Deb's going to talk to you about a learning design approach that helps you unpack all of this. So over to you, Deb.
Tēnā koe, ka pai. And so hopefully for those of you who've already been down this road, it's just a bit of a reminder about some of those things. But the learning approach that Tim talked about it seemed really relevant to what we were trying to achieve and the how to. So ultimately at the beginning, there's all of the what do you want them to know, do, and be. So how do you acquire all of that knowledge? And this is the way to create learning that drives that intrinsic motivation, like we talked about that before, some things that, we want to be a part of. And by designing learning that people can immediately answer, what's in it for me? So that answers your question, Vicky. We're going to look at that and think, sometimes it's not relevant, but hopefully that when we're preparing stuff as in your clusters, that we're going to be hitting the mark with what's going to be relevant. So setting clear, active objectives is going to be really beneficial to us all. We've created a little knowledge, skills and behaviours and actions, which we'll be able to share with you later on following I'll send that email that out to you guys, just to give you a little bit of what's in there for the knowledge, etc. Skills that we're hoping to design and create, also tools and activities, in the skills section, and some of the behaviours and actions that you're trying to improve within your cluster. Two. How will you communicate this? So leading up to, there's a lot of things that you might need to do depending on the PLD or the training that you're going to be participating in, whether it requires a sort of a book, again, an email, or having conversations, or smaller workshops leading up to the main event. So it's just about all of that front loading your colleagues with the right information and looking at how you might do this effectively as a team, leadership team, when preparing for those events. And thinking about too how others also prepare you for the event. If you're attending something, usually they send out some information for you to get a little bit of a head start on what to expect. And so that's what we can, again, this is probably not new stuff. There's probably already things that you are doing, but it's just reminders and prompts as we go through the process, and also incorporating the complexity training framework. This one here is looking at the pull and push. Again, that pedagogy that sets in with the self-directed learning, and really motivated, individuals really motivated in this space to do their own sort of delving into the mahi. You will know that if you're passionate about something, you tend to have start to read and listen to podcasts, etc. So it's just in giving us a little bit of an indication about that self-directed learning as opposed to the formal learning. When some of us who've been to first aid training, sometimes that information just doesn't quite stick, even though it's really relevant, but we have to participate in it nonetheless. And so, it's just about having a bit of an understanding about that and where our learners might be, our adult learners might be also on that space, in that space. Yeah, up high. And then again, if you get to the end of this part here and you just have a little bit of a check-in and think, can I do this? What's in it for me? And if I can't quite answer those questions, then we've got to keep it simple, but we probably have to go back to the beginning again and find out what's in it for you, the important stuff, and then try to reframe what that might look like for our learners. And that at the end, having a look at what does great look like. Ultimately, we design things like that, usually thinking about what does the best practice look like, and do we have examples that already exist within our clusters about what that, how can we use that peer-to-peer sharing, a lot like what we're doing now, and who does that really well. And so accessing those people that can support us in the presentation or in the training. I'm just going to share what our cluster did. We obviously going down the route of the cultural responsiveness, our team decided to put a proposal together to have a matariki celebration, which, as we know, there's a time now each year. And so we thought that we would try and get on the back of that and utilise that time while everybody's doing that to create a cultural responsive opportunity for ourselves to practice some of that and what that might look like. And so we decided to take it to the marae, utilising Hirungatu as the baseline, and thinking about the main purpose of it was to embody what it is that Hirungatu is all about, that entrance to engagement, and thinking about what, just walking through that whole process together as a cluster and a team, using the matariki context as the matariki as the context for the experiential learning. And so this is just looking at from the waharoa and to the hakari kai me te whakawātea. Sorry, we just get a little bit of a interruption there. And so, sorry about that. I got sidetracked in that. So this next section will go into just the making it stick. And you've got to see some of the key themes in there, beating the forgetting curve, which I know that we've all had a lot of, probably had a lot of conversations in and around through a lot of the science of learning stuff that we've done, the learning culture and making it emotional. Now, these images, if you're not sure, they come from the whole inside out learning, and those were linked to the images linked to the core memories, etc., for this particular young person. Beating the forgetting curve. So this one just goes back to the science of learning stuff, where we've got, there's the 31-day forget me curve. And so we just need to realise that if we can slot in some more opportunities to continue that learning for the adults or for our colleagues, and just making sure that we're keeping it relevant along the way, so that we can keep either checking in, more goal setting, and space practice, just some of the things identified on the slide there. Anything else you wanted to mention in there, Leonie, that I may have forgotten?
No, you're all good, Deb.
Right. Moving on. And so with that learning culture, as you see, I had to blur out the images of those who weren't in there, but you can see on that particular day that I was talking to you about, we created a number of activities that everybody could participate in. And it was wonderful. Also, one of the key features is about having that manager support and participation. So having them involved also gives value to the space and place and what we're doing. And so we participated in a number of activities that helped consolidate some of that knowledge and understanding for that particular day. And it also allows people to be vulnerable, because as we know, we're not all perfect and things do happen and we do fail at things sometimes, but it's okay, because we're all there, we're all learners. And so just, being able to provide a safe learning space for everybody to participate in, and thinking of those things on top when creating your training. This part here, and you probably already do this in terms of, this is just again with the front loading, obviously from the time that you're having the conversations with the cluster managers and practice leaders, to the time when the practice leaders are having those conversations with the team, and that transferring of knowledge and what support materials that you'll be providing to them, providing them with prior to the training event. So depending on what that might be, it may be those videos online or readings that you've been front loading with them with. And then of course you'll get to the training event, and by then hopefully everyone will have quite a clear idea of why they're there, what's the purpose, and some goals that they've set for themselves to achieve following that. And then following the training event, there'll be just some follow-up and some conversations in there, possibly coaching or related to your PGC. And I guess it was just about making sure that, we have all of that front loading as best as we can. I know that things get a bit busy, and so sometimes, we may miss some things, but ultimately, if it was a perfect world, we would have everything stepped out. But we do know that some things come up, and therefore, we have to pivot sometimes and work with what we've got on the day. Making it emotional. This image kind of summed it up for me. Having all of the generations involved, Tamariki Mai, our local school, the adults and some of the whānau that were around at that day to participate and make the day complete. It also allowed us as the RTLB to, see the connection that the RTLB have with the RTLB liaison had with the school. And just the mahi that they're doing there. And so celebrating that together, an opportunity to reflect on, the year and what had gone on, and for us moving forward as a cluster, thinking about how we might like to continue to do something like this and what it might look like. So each year now we had our first one, we've had our second one, and we're sharing that responsibility out with the clusters, and acknowledging that everybody has a different capability, and at a different capacity too. And so we're just, they're forming working groups to create the learning experiences for us related to our mahi within this kaupapa. So that was really exciting for us, and we had a wonderful day. But making that emotional connection to whatever it is that we're preparing or participating in is obviously really essential also to not only to that, but to us enjoying ourselves and being together and learning alongside the young ones, young and old. So ultimately, make it count and make it stick. Is our, with our privileged position of training adults, working alongside our colleagues and also working with the kaiako and kura, we have this unique opportunity to, try and be more effective with what it is that we're doing. And hopefully that some of these, some of the stuff that we've talked about is going to be helpful if you didn't already know, and apologies if you did already have a really good understanding of that. But yeah, so Mauri ora kia koutou. I think any questions? Or anything else that you'd like to add, Leonie?
I was actually wondering, because Fee was there with us, I just wondering, Fee, if you wanted to add anything. Was there anything we missed that
I'll
like
just jump back in. I think for me, what was incredibly impactful was taking a more, I guess, considered approach to the whole picture, and that rubric that you'd shown, the framework, was just gold. So Tim had actually developed that himself. He'd done a whole lot of kind of deep dive research and a lot of thinking around what actually makes learning stick, and realized that there was often professional development and what he'd cited. So I don't think we tend to think in terms of the dollar value when we bring the team together. And that was the other part to it, is that it's a resource, the RTLB out in schools, that's a valuable resource, and their time is valuable. And this is what kind of got him thinking around kind of wanting to make, if you're bringing the team together, really wanting to make that impactful and be really considered, is there value in this? And he gave us cited the kind of the dollar figure. It was phenomenal what it would cost Doc to bring people in for training, and how many hours were lost in terms of being in the field, and then equated that to the amount of hours that's required to kind of save penguins, for example. So it was an emotive aspect to it. Oh, I've got, so Sam, I'll just, I've noticed that you've got your hand up. Just finished this point. So I think that kind of the light bulb for me again was being aware that there are times when we will, particularly like a cluster day, we've kind of got people coming in, and we may spend time in that cluster day talking about things that probably can be an email. And we would look at, and I think, Leonie, your example around the CMS. The other thing I think sometimes happens is we go, okay, we need to do some PD around this, when it's actually probably a smaller group. And he mentioned that as well. Kind of, does this need to be everybody, or is it that there's a smaller group that would benefit from some extra? And that, I thought that was really good sort of thinking, something to highlight. Yeah, so Sam, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, kia ora. Ai, he pātai tāku. Tēnā koutou I tō koutou kōrero I te ata nei. Ina rā ki a koe, Deb, I tō kōrero rangatira mō te matariki, te hui matariki. Ngā mihi ki a koe. So just a question around, around relevance, adult learning principle of relevance, and the need for the PLD to be situated in the context of actually what's happening now, and that what's in it for me thing. Some of the, in my experience, because a lot of my responsibility is PLD around tikanga and te reo Māori, and I think a lot of my colleagues, for whatever reason, don't see the relevance of that, in that I'm not working with a Māori student right now. I've had those sorts of comments over the years. So I'm wondering, thoughts around what's in it for us rather than what's in it for me. How do we shift what's in it for me to what's in it for us, thinking more about bigger aspect of just, you know, what do I, because I think if you think only what's in it for me, you're going with your own biases, what's valuable to you only, but not what's valuable to your colleagues, whānau that you're working with, whether they're Māori or not, for example. For my practice in general, we know that what's good for Māori is good for everyone type of thing. So yeah, just some of your thoughts around that, anyone?
I might jump in just because I'm just reading Marg Thorsborn's, rereading her restorative trauma-informed educators. And it touches on this around intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And I totally agree with your comments, Emma. I just wonder if it's taking that approach that what's in it for me that I can then be of better service. And so it's kind of there's that subtle difference rather than what's in it for me as a wholly, completely agree, kind of selfish perspective, as opposed to what can I learn and grow and how can this help me show up in a better way? And I think that's probably that subtle shift in the way that we might approach something. But I think the reality is there needs to be that connect to personal meaning if we're wanting that learning to stick. And that was the other thing that I was just reading this morning around. We will tag to, and I completely agree with that comment, we do tag to what our previous experiences are and our own biases. So us as deliverers of the professional development, these are all aspects that I think are critically important to be aware of. I could give an example, and very briefly, because I see there's a couple of people with hands up. We're running through the inclusive design modules with the whole cluster, so focus for this year. And there's 3 of us that are facilitating that. The way they've got them set up, it would have started with the acts, all the laws, and we went, that's not really going to engage with people in terms of personal meaning. So we started with an activity that allowed them to really see the amount of variability that we have in class, and that the feedback we got was that was really impactful, because that has that personal meaning piece around these are the kids that you are supporting. And so yeah, that was kind of an example. But I'll hand over to Leonie and Deb. I think Kim's got her hand up.
Kim, you got your hand up.
Kia ora
Vicky,
koutou, sorry.
would you like to? Sorry.
You were going to speak first. Ka pai?
Hi.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree what Sam said, that I think there's also a consideration there around cultural considerations as well, around that, and that individual collective way of learning, and that here as well, considering that sometimes we learn collectively as opposed to individually, and to having those considerations that while it is just about us, but it's also for some people they learn better together rather than just individually. So having those considerations in how adults are learning as well, and that also that theory around adult learning, there's other ways we can look at that, like relational learning, like Ramona was saying, that relational theory is where you become one unit and you learn together as that one unit through that relational sort of connection. So I think weaving some of those in with how it's not sort of one's better than the other. It's just really, like someone mentioned before, knowing your team, knowing your people, and then pulling and grasping on those elements of adult learning or andragogy that work best within that group, but also considering the culture of our team as well, because I think having a culture of learning overall is really important too. Ngā mihi kia koutou. Thank you for all your awesome work today.
Kia ora. Whai Ramona, did you have a kōrero?
Oh, I just wanted to follow up with Fiona, with what Fiona was saying. It is so important, and for you too, Sam, particularly for new RTLB and in that induction phase and learning and modelling. It's all about how can I as an RTLB, how can I contribute and participate for the betterment of the service? And then that next layer, how can I participate, contribute, and give back to the betterment of my colleagues? And lastly, the self is last. You know, that service to others, that driving that message, the service to others and the learning to others is for the betterment of the service.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe. Vicky, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up?
Oh, I did, but it kind of got answered. I just want to, it was more around, like, I agree with Sam and Kim, Ramona, and what Fee was saying. It kind of made some connection around my question around the emotional part of making the learning stick. So to me, some things lend itself a little bit better to having that emotional connection, such as your matariki celebration, where it's, you know, whakawhanaungatanga is so important in there, and you're doing things together and you have like that togetherness is so great. But I'm just thinking about, you know, the dry, boring old PLD that sometimes we have to do or deliver, or how do you make it an emotional connection? But I guess it is what Kim was kind of touching on there, I think, for me, was around that relational approach. It's the togetherness. It's putting the time and effort into building culture and whakawhanaungatanga within your cluster. So I think that kind of answered my question, but I'm just wondering if there was anything else that anyone can add to that wondering that I have around the emotional connection.
Or
Can I just add a little thought to that too, in terms of emotional connection? I particularly liked, Deb, the way that you involved the mokopuna in your matariki celebration. I think that's where our emotional connection comes from. It's the reason why we do what we do. It's mokopuna me harato whānau, and I think as RTLB, we often do our androgyny separate to the reason why we are doing what we do. And so I really believe that if we can enhance relevance, enhance emotional connection, we have to look at it in terms of the wider whānau mokopuna, the wider network. That's my thinking.
whai Mari. Tāhua ngā kōrero whānau, beautiful kōrero and sharing. Thank you so much. He kōrero anō, Leonie? Shall we move on to the...
Yeah, I guess if there's no further questions.
Oh, kia ora, Sam.
Sorry, just one more thing, trying to be a time hog here. I was thinking too wider, what's in it for us? I was thinking bigger as well than just this RTLB service. I'm thinking about when we participate in PLD, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the education system needing to be more reflective of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and less a colonial system, which we still have. So I guess I was thinking bigger as well in terms of what's in it for us when we do PLD, that we base it on the premise that our system, our education system, which includes our RTB service, which is a small part of the education system, that it reflects Te Tiriti o Waitangi more and more explicitly, that be the focus. So that's just my other whakaaro around what I said, just to provide more context about what I was thinking. Ngāmihi.
Tēnā koe. Kia ora, Vicky. Oh, she's thumbsing. Thumbings up. Ka pai tātou. All right. We're just going to go into the what's
Okay,
next,
so
Leonie.
what's next in terms of what we've shared with you today? So connecting, start a conversation, share a resource in the PLs group on the website relevant to what we've chatted about today. Share your new learning with your leadership team and discuss how you might incorporate it into your cluster. And have a go at using the training complexity framework and the knowledge, skills, behaviours and actions template as well, which we found really valuable. And so if you don't know about our website, there's the link there. And if you're not in a group yet, just pop into the group section and ask to join the PL Rōpū. And the QR code there is for our Facebook page if you're not already on there.
Pai tātou, and he mihi whakamutinga. Sorry, Fiona.
Sorry. I just suddenly thought this is a chance to do a bit of a shout out and promo for the Focus Rōpū.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that just then. So I don't mind. So I would imagine, because you guys are all awesome and you've been incredibly supportive of Aotearoa Aotearoa, which we really appreciate, that you will have had one or two emails in for and to submit an expression of interest for our focus groups. The different webinars that we've been running, our different Rōpū, just asking for an hour of people's time just to get that feedback around what's worked, what hasn't, so know some of the things you've gained from that. It's a requirement for the networks of expertise funding, that's ministry funding. All of the networks of expertise have a requirement to, as part of their data collection, run a focus Rōpū. And this year there's a little bit more higher stakes because we're just coming to the end of this round of funding, and we will be putting in a new request for proposal. I think it's called RFP for funding to carry through for another, I think it's 2 years, 9 months each cycle. So would really, 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 really love to hear from you. There's been one that's come out for the PL Rōpū, and we're just sort of looking for 6 to 10 to participate in that. And we'd love your input. There you go, Deb. And back to you.
Ka pai. No reira, he mihi nui tēnei kia tātou katoa. Kua whai wāhi mai ki tēnei kaupapa I tēnei ata. Just a really big thank you and shout out to you all who have found time in your day today in your Monday morning for us today to share in this kōrero. And we wish you a very wonderful rest of your week until we see each other next. No reira, tui tera, māku te karakia hei whakakapi a tātou. No reira, me inoi tātou. Kia tau te manaakitanga ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia piki te ora, kia piki te māramatanga, kia hoki pai atu, kia hoki pai mai, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, haumie, huie, tae kie. Settle the care and protection upon each of us. May the health and understanding grow. Return well to others and ourselves. Hold fast to your authenticity. Be firm, join together, gather together, bind as one. Mauri ora kia tātou.